let's review something, buddy.
Yeah.
Have we bitten off more than we can chew with this Buddy Holly thing? Should it have been one video?
Yes. We'll find out. It's fine. It's a thing. It's a special. It's part of the specials, and the specialness will justify the lack of content. So yeah, Buddy Holly, second album. It's not called Buddy Holly 2, it's called Buddy Holly. Well done. So it's supposed to be his first solo album, but it's actually got the Crickets on it, which makes no difference, obviously. So remember, the Crickets was only because he was stuck in a record contract with Decca. Was it Decca? I think it was Decca. And that meant he couldn't use his own name, so that's why it was the Crickets. It wasn't Buddy Holly and the Crickets, it was the Crickets. So once that had been sorted, I assume that's why he just went back to Buddy Holly, and the Crickets were like... But they were still on the album at this point. It's the second album. This is the Peggy Sue one. That's kind of about it. I don't like this one as much as the first. I don't know if it could be completely my imagination, but there's a stylistic difference. Is it more country and less skiffle? I don't know whether that's a thing, really. It is. It's got Peggy Sue on it. So of course it is. But I don't like it as much. I mean, it's got Ready Teddy on it, which is definitely not country. Maybe it's more contrived. Maybe it's, this is what we sound like now. Let's do that. There is at least one horrible guitar solo on Listen to Me. I had to actually turn it down. You know, it hadn't been decided how you play an electric guitar in rock and roll yet. You know, and he obviously wasn't listening to Chuck Berry. So, yes, at the very least, not as consistent. There's some good songs and some less good songs, I think.
I think it's more interesting in the sense that you can probably more directly link this to the Beatles. You can you can hear the Beatles trying to emulate maybe this in their earlier stuff, I would say. I've never been a big fan of Peggy Sue. I always thought Every Day was his best song ever.
But I don't think the version I listened to didn't have Every Day on it.
Every day, just a little longer in every way. Yeah, I'm listening to a modern version. I know they put extra tracks.
How does that work? How did I miss the best song that's on the album? That shows. Never mind. Yeah, I agree. Every Day is his best song. You know, I mean, there's a lot of songs you hear, that's Buddy Holly, but there are the sort of definitive songs, Every Day, Peggy Sue, and the one on the other album that we did, that one, are the ones I associate with him. Yeah,
I agree. And a lot of other, there's just a lot of other stuff, isn't it? It's sort of like...
I mean, like, Oh Boy is a very, very Buddy Holly song, and it's a famous song, but somehow that's not him. That's not his famous thing.
Yeah. So it's very difficult to review, because we weren't around this time, and we're not even around close to this time. So like when we 70s stuff, you know, we were born at the end of the 70s, and we could almost juxtapose the 80s with the 70s, and you know, realise.
Yes.
With this stuff, we've got practically no connection with it whatsoever.
Yeah.
So this all sounds very, very tame to us, but this is obviously.
Yeah.
This is new stuff. This is rock and roll, and rock and roll is a bit of a new thing in this format. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what he's famous for. Is essentially theoretically inventing.
Popularising it.
Yeah, popularising rock and roll in that format. And that's, I mean, these are pretty good rock and roll songs taken in the context of everything. You know, it's not good. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, so much of it, I wouldn't call it rock and roll, I'd call it skiffle. But obviously there isn't actually a line.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, we know Ready Teddy is rock and roll, and we know Peggy Sue is skiffle. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter.
I mean, it's useful in the sense that, you know, we talk about, with Fleetwood Mac and the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin, sort of like the blues influence. Yeah. But I mean, these are he's influential on those. Well,
all those bands.
Yeah, the Rolling Stones. You know, he covered one of his songs, but his influence is more directly country. I mean, he was doing country before this, so So it shows that. I mean, maybe there's an oversimplistic view of rock being a sort of
pop.
An amalgamation of British
tunes.
British rock incorporating blues and rock and roll incorporating blues, inventing rock and everything sort of thing. I don't actually know how long the rock and roll thing lasted. I suppose the Beatles are a...
Well, it was like, I think it was about 1959. Someone said, "Well, the time's over for guitar bands. It's finished now." So maybe it was then.
Yeah.
And then no more. Sorry. I think the country thing is interesting. Well, partially because of Buddy Holly, but a huge amount of rock and roll and therefore rock grew out of country, or at least some country artists thought they could make more money making rock and roll, maybe. And that's really strange because rock people generally, even those with very eclectic tastes, they like a bit of everything, tend to have a dislike of country, or profess to have a dislike of country rather than disliking particular songs. There is a distaste for it now. I suspect at the time it would have been the other way around, where the country was the proper stuff and the rock and roll, that's just silly, I imagine. And so but it is interesting that so much of it comes from that, and now it's looked on as something trivial and tasteless, crass.
What country is crass and tasteless?
Yeah, or something. Yeah. Tasteless is the bit, not crass. Tasteless, sort of sickly. It's country. I mean, you could argue a lot of his influence isn't just the music. It's he had his nerdy image.
Obviously, John Lennon.
Yeah,
tried to run with that, didn't he?
Yeah, and at the time that was probably a sort of, they like marketing that because it's a sort of not threatening thing, but it probably had a huge influence. I mean, the Shadows.
Yeah,
there'd probably be no Shadows because they wouldn't have done it. It is. But I mean, if you read all the biographies and people have written about it, so much of it is so mundane. They went here, and he went on a tour for 2 weeks with this person.
He was, we're talking about a very short period of time, aren't we?
18 months, so there's nothing else to say.
Very hard to write a book.
And he went to this house and he said these words. Then he went home and had tea. There just isn't much information, so I imagine a Buddy Holly biography. Well, there's a movie, isn't there?
Yeah.
I'll have to watch that. In fact, before next week is the time to watch it. I think it's on YouTube. I know around this time is where maybe it started to unwind. That might be an exaggeration because there's so little happening. They were all concerned about the bookkeeping of Mr. Petty. I've always wondered if it's Tom's dad. I think it's Tom Petty's dad, I've decided. Was he keeping all the money? And I think certainly the perceptions they all were back then. But we've also had this impression that he was more astute than some of the others at the time. He moved, didn't he? Because he didn't have control over the musicians and the production and all that stuff. But there was a disagreement with another promoter in New York who wanted some big payout because he decided he'd been managing him. And I think Buddy Holly had sort of caused that. And so therefore Petty couldn't get the money off him to give to Buddy Holly, and it was kind of Buddy Holly's fault. So it sounds more complicated than him just keeping the money. And he went on a date with a woman. First date. Well, no, not even that. Met her, asked her out, took her on a date, proposed, and they got married.
Yeah. And now she owns Buddy Holly.
Yeah. That was handy. And the manager advised them to keep it a secret to not alienate the female fans. And I think John Lennon did the similar thing, but didn't really take it seriously because he would, on the radio, he'd say, "Oh, I'm married." No, I'm not. No, shh. He would be sarcastic about it.
Do you know? I think Jackie Chan's done that.
Really?
I think they've never confirmed whether he's married or anything like that. And I remember in a TV interview they asked him directly, and he just says, "Oh, I can't say."
It's me.
Jackie Chan.
The ladies like Jackie Chan?
He must be. Yeah, he must. Well, obviously, he's a big thing in China. He's like a Chinese superstar.
Yeah. So it was it kind of all going a bit wobbly at this point. Maybe, that is a thing. It does seem he was branching out. So very quickly he wanted to move on to other things. I think it would be easy to think that had he carried on, he was sort of drifted into country and easy listening as he got older. But I don't think that was the case. He was learning flamenco, or talking about wanting to learn flamenco guitar, which is really interesting because obviously the skiffle, that was his guitar style, and that's so influential. And then to move from that to fingerstyle shows that he wouldn't have just gone bland, I think. But he was also he wanted to take acting lessons and go into movies, and so it does sound he wasn't living for what he was doing. He was moving art. Yeah,
I mean, the circles he moved in. Elvis Presley. He obviously knew Elvis Presley.
Mm-hmm.
I'd open for obviously he looked up to him and see what he was doing. Obviously, he didn't have the personality of Elvis Presley. He could reinvent himself. He'd already reinvented himself once. The rock and roll form of Buddy Holly was very different to the country Buddy Holly.
I suppose so. Yeah. That's true.
Well, I should imagine he was quite sceptical whether the rock and roll thing would last. So he probably was always on the lookout.
Yes. Although we joke about it, there was nobody would have said, "Oh, it's going to last forever." In 2018, people are going to be talking about this album.
Well, I mean, it has finished, hasn't it? I mean, rock and roll. Yes. I mean, rock is different from rock and roll. It is. Well,
rock has finished as well.
Yeah.
It finished in the early 80s. Really, that was it. Everything else is retro. There is no new rock really. There's good bands. It doesn't mean it's new.
Yeah.
Well, there's that famous quote, isn't there? There's the one about guitar bands. There's the other one where Mick Jagger isn't going to be dancing around when he's 40. He's nearly 80. He's the same. So he split from his manager and the Crickets. The Crickets stayed with the manager, interestingly, even though they were just as concerned about the royalties as he was. But that meant he had no income because Mr. Petty wasn't paying him, so he had to go on tour. See you next week.
Is that it?
Yeah. What did we give the last one? What eggs? Retro eggs.
Maybe 5. I don't know.
I'm going to give this one 4 then. Let's go its best song on it.
Yeah.
I didn't like it as much.
I mean, there's only so much you can. Maybe this is sort of like a Piper at the Gates of Dawn type thing. Okay, one album, done. Awesome. No more.
More songs.
More of this nonsense. Yeah, there's a point where it turns from interesting and new and to
the same
nonsense.
The same. Interestingly, my kids thought this was hilarious. They thought the music was hilarious. Now, bear in mind, the music they normally hear from me. So it's not that they're not expecting. It's not that they're expecting the current pop charts. They thought this album was really funny. I thought, what are you listening to? Isn't that interesting? I didn't expect that. I thought, well, this is just more of that rock stuff. Right, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Till next time. Same time next time.